So let me just start with her first denial. You told me on Monday, Dustin, that Don Lemon's team offered to settle the case for $400,000 and in total made 3 settlement offers. She has now denied that, saying they have made no settlement offers other than an $8,000, it's called an offer of judgment, basically nuisance value. So who's lying?
She is. I got 3 separate settlement offers. $400,000 in the first beginning before it all went to the public. And then sometime after that, another, I believe it was $25,000, and then the $8,000 nuisance or whatever she calls it.
Okay, so one for $400,000, one for $25,000, and one for $8,000?
Correct.
Okay, but the $400,000 one was offered prior to you filing the lawsuit?
Correct.
Okay. Now, they say that you offered to pay a key witness in the case who we discussed on Monday. His name is George Gonzalez, in exchange for his testimony. He's your main and I believe only witness other than yourself. I mean, you're going to testify that this happened to you. And George, we talked about this on Monday, and he gave an interview to FoxNews.com, has said he saw the whole thing and that you're telling the truth. They say that you offered to pay him for his testimony and that you failed to produce the texts showing that in discovery. Okay, here's an example. On March 24th, 2019, they have a text where you write to him, "You know, if I get money, I'll take care of you, my dude." And George testified at his deposition. I'm assuming that Dustin meant he'll give me something if he wins something. Then there's a text shown to George in his deposition where you say, Dustin, you say, "We're celebrating after all this shit." George says, "Any word on that?" You say, "I got you. I'm a man of my word." George again at his deposition. I guess he's insinuating if he gets anything, he'll take care of me money-wise. And then another text, you, Dustin, to George, "You're the star witness, LOL. George, I'm in. You know I'll take care of you." So these do sound like offers to pay George for his testimony. Why did you do that?
Well, George took a huge risk in speaking out on me. He had only known me for a few weeks prior to the incident happening. And, and quite frankly, he suffered a lot of damage to this. He lost a job working for a celebrity. And one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to speak out is because they're fearful of what the repercussions would be.
So you were aware of the fact that he might be reticent given the blowback he might get in the Hamptons with the celebrity community?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Blacklisted. If you speak out against celebrities, it's like taboo in the Hamptons.
When you came out on Monday, you suggested that he'd been fired from a job with a very well-known celebrity after the FoxNews.com article with him hit. We now know from the deposition transcripts, the pieces that we've seen, that celebrity was Madonna. So you're saying Correct. Madonna got wind of his FoxNews.com article and fired him?
Correct.
How does he know it was related to the interview?
From what I gathered, her publicist read, I Googled him or something, and his name came up as a witness, and she fired him because of that.
Now, I'm going to ask your lawyer this in a second, Dustin, but why didn't you produce those texts between you and George in the course of discovery? They suggest this was you trying to hide evidence.
Quite honestly, I had hundreds and hundreds of texts and Facebook messages, and I gave my attorneys at the time my passwords to go through and find whatever they can. I produced everything that I willingly had and knew about. I wasn't trying to hide any evidence from them.
Robert, what about that? Because they're asking for the case to basically be thrown out because they say Dustin hid evidence.
Well, it's a case of confession through projection because the only party who has failed to produce meaningful text, DMs, social media information, emails, phone messages is Don Lemon, who's produced almost nothing, claims he has nothing at all that could possibly be pertinent or relevant to this case or to any other accusations or allegations that have been made against him in the past. So the only person that's hiding information and hiding documentation is Don Lemon himself. Dustin has produced hundreds and thousands of text messages, DMs, personal accounts, social media accounts, everything imaginable. He has overproduced, quite frankly, whereas Don Lemon has produced next to nothing. So it's mostly a case of them projecting onto Dustin what Don Lemon himself has been up to.
But you did delete your Twitter. I think you told me that too on Monday, Dustin. But then you restored it, as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I did that to just avoid bully tactics from people, and I, to my knowledge, thought I was putting it deactivating it where I could go back on, but I ended up deleting it. But there was nothing on there about CNN. Again, I had never paid any attention to CNN except for being bored one day and having a day in Atlanta where I went and toured the studios. And prior to that, I'd only watched, Anthony Bourdain and never paid any attention to Don Lemon or.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely zero evidence that I've seen that suggests you had any sort of a focus on Don Lemon prior to this encounter in the bar. Okay, let's talk about Isabel. There's a witness named Isabel who was in the bar on the night in question. She's a friend of yours. And you texted George asking about what this woman, Isabel, might say about this case. And George responded, quote, "She knows it happened, but she would 100% lie to protect Lemon." He then goes on, this is George again, "I would try and move away from her. She's a C word and will try to ruin this." Ruin what? What specifically was the concern there?
Well, so George and Isabel had a relationship, somewhat, I guess you could call it, over that summer. And she is a resident of Sag Harbor, as are her parents. And at her high school graduation, her parents know Don Lemon. They're friends, are acquaintances. And at her high school graduation, they even got Don Lemon to speak at her high school graduation. So she's well aware of everything that's transpired. But, because of their close relationship with him, I don't know if George and her, they were not dating anymore. And he implied that she would be willing to lie on his behalf.
Yeah, I mean, he says that in writing in the same text exchange. She would 100% lie to protect Lemon, but she will try to ruin this. Basically, what the other side suggests is that this kind of sounds like two witnesses settling on how to keep out testimony that may conflict with what you and George were going to say. Is that fair?
Well, she's well aware of what happened. She was with us almost every night, and the constant harassment and antagonizing I got from being out. She witnessed it, the lemon drops and people tossing lemons, real lemons across the bar at me, not jokingly, but to me, it wasn't very funny.
What do you make of the fact that she apparently testified she doesn't believe George did witness this exchange? She believes George was talking to her at the time this took place and that George is not actually an eyewitness to anything.
Well, George was right next to me when it happened. So, I can't speak to her thoughts on her testimony.
All right, let's talk about that because one of the things that they are pointing to is that George, at his deposition, wavered a bit on his testimony. He's your star witness. Again, you're the real star witness, but he's your best and only. He testified at his deposition repeatedly. I looked at just the pages that their lawyer submitted. I haven't read the whole deposition transcript. I'm sure there's stuff in there that's good for you too. Anyway, he testified at his deposition repeatedly that he did see Don Lemon rub his genitals and then your face. But she kept coming at him over and over and over. And later he did waver, ultimately saying that he wasn't sure if he actually did see Lemon touch you, saying, quote, "I'm not 100% sure if I saw it or not." Point for Don Lemon, no?
I mean, I can't speak to that deposition, but George saw it all happen. And he actually was one of the ones that teased me and antagonized me about it more than anybody because he was my boss. And every day I went into work and they'd be like, two fingers up and I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that I did over 10 hours worth of deposition. And by the end, I was feeling a little shaken and despondent, to say the least.
Well, these things can be unpleasant, that's for sure. Robert, what do you make of that? Because, George repeatedly said it happened, I saw it. And then as time went on, he did waver and started saying, "I don't know, I'm frustrated. You asked me so many times, I'm not sure. You think you see it and you say it so many times over and over, and then you're not sure whether you imagined it." He said that.
Yeah, it's basically a case of a lawyer badgering about every tiny little subcomponent. And what George is talking about is just one component of it. What has been undisputed throughout this case is that George has, from the get-go, long before any of the texts that they're complaining about, has always said what happened is what Dustin said happened. Indeed, there's going to be evidence at trial that Isabel said the same thing. So if she gets up and tells a different story now, even though she lawyered up in these proceedings, actually ended up with one of the magistrates assigned our case at one point was part of the law firm that was representing her. So there's been a lot of interesting developments in this case. But what all of the evidence is that I have found supports Dustin's story 100%.